covering the Utes better than anyone else. This is Ute Insider Steve Bartle of KSLSports.com on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Well, no Kyle Whittingham today because, well, it's a bye week and Whit doesn't talk to the media on bye week, so no okay, all right. But we do have Steve Bartle joining us, Ute Insider for KSLSports.com. Steve, how are you?
Hey, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay is after a win, so yeah, it's an okay day.
But Steve, it's more okay.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My bad. I tried to add my own flavor to it.
No, that's all good. All right. Look, I think we all thought Utah was going to beat Cincinnati, but I didn't have a blowout in that kind of a way on my bingo board. I mean, just a massive statement by Utah. How impressed with you, or how impressed are you with what you saw on Saturday?
Yeah, I was fairly impressed, but obviously what we've seen from Utah this month, I think is really impressive. And, when you look at what they've done so far this season, a lot of big wins, a lot of comfortable wins this season. And the two teams, that they've dropped games against, Texas Tech, BYU, it's pretty clear that those two teams are, top 15 and very deserving of those rankings and are very good. And, there's a lot of context around that Texas Tech game that we don't need to dive into. But, Utah's pretty much shown us, like, this is what they're capable of. And what they've done to what they did against Cincinnati was really impressive, more so on the defensive side of the ball than anything else. I was really impressed with the defensive secondary and the performance they had against Brendan Sorsby, who I was really high on him coming into the season. I liked his game a lot. Felt like Cincinnati didn't have the pieces around him to really maximize his potential, but they've added some good pieces there, some good receivers, good pass catchers, and Sorsby has really benefited from that. And coming into that was going to be an interesting matchup. Was Utah's secondary in man coverage against Sorsby in that pass catching group, and Utah's man coverage really impacted Sorsby's ability to make good decisions, make good throws. He finished 11 of 33 on the game, and Utah's just made it really tough on Sorsby to find any sort of window to make throws. And I think that was the real key to the game, was Utah disrupting Cincinnati's RPO attack, disrupting them at the line of scrimmage, and getting Sorsby off of his rhythm. Because, Utah's – I mean, you go back to last week against Colorado, and the formula was getting pressure on Salter because he liked to hold on to the ball, and you could get home on him. Against Sorsby, coming into this game, I think he averaged, about 2.5 seconds in terms of taking the snap and getting a throw off. Against Utah, that was even lower at 2.3 seconds. So it was a credit. It's a credit to the secondary and the way that they performed, because Utah wasn't able to get the same amount of pressure that they have been against other quarterbacks, because Sorsby was so focused on getting the ball out quickly. So a really impressive job by the secondary, and I think that group has made tremendous strides over the course of the season, and that is probably the biggest surprise from Utah's performance against Cincinnati.
One thing I wanted to point out is to give Jason Beck a ton of credit for the way he's used Daniel Bray. I feel like Daniel Bray has become a critical piece on third downs, a critical piece in major big plays. Talk about the way Jason has used Bray and your thoughts kind of what Bray was and where he's come from, and then how important he is to finish out this season.
Yeah, Bray's been fantastic for Utah. Breaking onto the scene late in the game against West Virginia, it was immediately apparent that the speed he possesses and the athleticism and balance he possesses is just special. The first handoff he took in that West Virginia game, there was some audible reactions from the Utah media members in attendance at that game, just because it stood out. And so, he's added another layer to an already creative and diverse rushing attack with Jason Beck at the helm. And what Bray has done he's added speed. He's added an outside threat that you can't not account for. When you see him come in motion, you now have to not only honor, you have to respect it and pay a lot of respect to it, because even if you are in position, he has the type of athleticism to simply get by you, regardless of where you're at. So he's been really impressive without a doubt, and it's been interesting to see his role develop over the last couple of weeks, where now he's an option in the passing game. He only finished with 43 yards, I think, on the ground, 45, somewhere in that range. But he finished with 86 total yards, split pretty evenly, rushing and receiving. So adding that element to this offense, a pass catching back out of the backfield is just another weapon for Beck to utilize in this offense, which obviously needs help in the passing game. Ryan Davis has been fantastic, but to have an explosive element like Bray out of the backfield where he can line up, in the slot, out wide, he's comfortable doing that. He did that throughout high school as well. He's just a versatile piece, and he's going to be pretty important to Utah's chances moving forward.
Where do you, just in the conversations you had before the game and maybe afterwards as well, where do you put the percentage of health that Devin Dampier was at going into that game?
I have no idea. He was healthy enough to go, and there was a lot of motivation on his part to play in that game. The mindset going back to Colorado was, take this week because I got to be ready to lead this team against Cincinnati. Cincinnati was going to be a much tougher test. And, Bray, not Bray, but Dampier, you could tell he wasn't the 100% like we saw against Arizona State a couple weeks ago, where he had a lot of explosive, elusive moments with the ball in his hand. He didn't have that same sort of explosion. So clearly, the bye week comes at a good time for him, but he was good enough to go. And Dampier he has that sort of mindset where if he's anywhere close to being capable of playing, he wants to play. And it's such an interesting conversation now, where 5 or 6 years ago, these guys are, lauded for that sort of mentality and being out there for your guys and for your teammates, for your brothers and all that. And now it's met with a lot of criticism because of, what's now attached to these players and the financial, things and all of that. So it's just an interesting conversation. But, Dampier, he has that sort of mindset that, if he's able to go, he wants to be out on that field.
So no offensive touches by Benny, no offensive touches by Snowden, no offensive touches by Barton. A lot of these defensive players that were going two ways and giving that offense a little bit of a punch, it feels like it's really backed off. Is this an effort by Kyle Whittingham, seeing Smith Snowden, who is kind of beat up and playing through a lot of pain, and seeing Benny, who nearly went out for a few weeks? I was surprised to see him come back as quick as he did. Is this a Kyle Whittingham kind of getting involved? Is this just the way the scheme showed? Help me understand what's going on with the defensive players that played such a role for this offense to start the season.
You've just had players emerge. Daniel Bray, with his speed, that's allowed Utah to keep Smith on that defensive side of the ball. And with the matchups this month, Utah's needed Snowden on the defensive side of the ball with the receivers that they've gone up against in these last 4 games. And so, with the emergence of Bray, that's allowed Snowden to focus on defense. And then, offensively with Jackson Benny, Lander Barton, you've seen other guys step up as well. J.J. Buchanan has played a little bit more the last couple of weeks. And then, you've seen Larry Simmons step up as well. Jackson Benny still got a couple of snaps. Lander Barton still got a couple of snaps against Cincinnati. And so that's still a thing that Beck and Whittingham are, they're getting those guys on the offense side of the ball. Dampier almost connected with Benny, on another vertical shot. They're going to connect on one that actually counts this season. I know that. They're trying to get that home run shot, Dampier and Benny. But, yeah, I think it's just been that you've seen other players emerge, and there's been a greater need to focus, their snap count on the defensive side of the ball, particularly with Snowden. He is so important to Utah's success on defense, not just in terms of, who he is as a player. He's just fantastic in coverage. And, yeah, I think it's important to note that he wasn't 100% against Cincinnati. He got beat a couple times, and I think understanding that he wasn't at 100% is important because Snowden has been really, really good all season long. And I think Cincinnati just found a way to take advantage of of Snowden, who, again, just wasn't at 100%. But I think the bye week comes at a good time for him. It comes at a good time for other players as well to get rest and regroup and prepared for the final 3 games of the season.
Steve Bartle, Ute Insider, KSLSports.com, joining us. All right, Steve, for those that have crunched the numbers, that have looked at it, what's it going to take for Utah to make it into a Big 12 title game?
First, it starts with Utah winning out. You got to take care of your own business. If you drop another one against Baylor, Kansas State, or Kansas, right, you're going to need a lot of help. So first and foremost, Utah has to take care of their own business, in these next 3 games. So Utah's got to win out. And then from there, it can be as simple as BYU winning out. And there's tiebreaker scenario where it's Utah-BYU in the Big 12 title game. If Texas Tech wins out, you're going to need a couple other losses elsewhere from some other teams to kind of, get Utah into the title game against Texas Tech in a rematch. But that's another scenario. There's a lot of other scenarios that we can run through. But at the end of the day, it all depends on Utah taking care of their business this month against Baylor and Kansas State and Kansas. And then, they're going to need help if you want to start talking about different matchups. But really, it can be as simple as Utah and BYU winning out, and we're talking about a BYU-Utah Big 12 title game in Arlington, Texas, in that first week of December.
Steve, I was talking to somebody very, very close to the program, and we were talking about this season and the Texas Tech loss and the BYU loss and just how difficult that is because this individual that's very, very closely tied to the program believes this is one of the best teams that they've ever had in form of great talent, great leadership, speed. They feel like this is as good a team as they've coached in the time that they've been there at the University of Utah. Give me your thoughts on that comment, and do you feel similar with the personnel that they've got currently on this roster?
We can have that conversation, and I understand why that person would feel that way. You look at that offensive line, you have 2 potential first-round draft picks and veterans, along the interior of that offensive line. You look at the defense, and you start up front with John Henry Daly and Logan Fano rushing off the edges. Look at the secondary with Taylor Johnson, Smith Snowden, and what they mean to this group. I still think there's that 2019 team was really, really good. I think we take that group for granted sometimes when you look in the NFL and you're still seeing Julian Blackmon, Lucky Fotu, Tyler Huntley, Zach Moss, making plays in the NFL. That group was really, really good. I think Utah is missing maybe a true dynamic pass catcher. Ryan Davis has been incredible and obviously benefited from the chemistry that he has with Dampier coming into Utah.
He's been amazing.
Yeah, I think he's been great. And obviously he's number 2 or number 4 in the Big 12 in a number of receiving categories this year. So, he's been really, really productive for Utah. I think one thing that we're seeing is, there's obviously a lot of talent, a lot of high-end talent on this roster. But there's still, a number of players at key positions that didn't play in big games, right? I mean, you look at the quarterback position, Devin Dampier he has the familiarity with the offense. But I think going through a couple big games early on in the season, Texas Tech and BYU, that's a learning experience for him. He hasn't been in that type of game, before in his career. And so for him and other players, that's something that they've got to go through and they've got to experience, and they'll be better for it on the other side. So that's an element that I think, is interesting when you start talking about the best teams under Kyle Whittingham, right? I think that 2019 team had played in a lot of big games prior to that season and felt prepared. It felt like a real veteran group on top of, a lot of great talent across the board. So it's certainly interesting. I think there's been a lot of improvement this season as well, which has been a lot of fun to see and follow this season.
So, in terms of the bye week, you feel like this came at probably about as good of a time as it possibly could for Utah, correct?
Oh, yeah. I think this is a great spot for a bye week. You just got through the most difficult phase of your schedule. You finished that month 3-1, and now you get a bye week to kind of reset, regroup for the home stretch. And with Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas, Baylor has been such a wild card this season. Kansas State, it seems like they've started to figure some things out, but then, they're still kind of up and down. And then Kansas too, you're going to have to be healthy against these programs. You're going to need to be, refreshed, rejuvenated. And I think it comes at a really great time for Utah to take care of business, right? You've got to run the table. You've got to go 3-0. So to have this week to kind of, again, reset and refocus your mindset for these next 3 weeks, I think it comes at a great time for Utah.
Man, I think it comes at a perfect time, and I think that they can reload, and honestly, they'll be favored in all 3 of those games. Should be favored on all 3 of those games. And even though 2 are on the road, they should find a way through each of those, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. And then you start looking at the matchups, right? Speaking to why they should be favored, the formula against each of those teams is run the ball and protect the ball, right? And that's what Utah does. They run the ball as good as anybody in the country. I shouldn't say as good, almost better than most of the country. And it's going to be up to those programs to prove that they can stop it. But Utah, I think, you feel good about how they match up with these programs moving forward against Baylor, Kansas State, and Kansas.
Do you want to see a Utah-BYU Big 12 title game, or would you rather just be Utah and somebody else?
I want to see Utah in the Big 12 title game. I don't care who it's against. I want to be there in Arlington. I want to go to Hutchins Barbecue. I want that. That's what I want. As long as Utah's there, bring it on,
By the way, Thursday night, I will be at Hutchins Barbecue.
Attaboy.
Very fired up for that.
Appreciate you, dog. Appreciate you, dude.
All right. Hey, Steve, appreciate your time, man. Good stuff as always.
See you, Steve.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Talk to you later.
There he is, Steve Bartle, Ute Insider, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.